This report is a part of POL 500 research methodology. Our group members include with Song Hui Lu, School of Art, Muhammad Sani Abdullah, School of Social Science, Suthasini Suwarnapak, School of Management, Muhammad Nasir Madullah Al-Mahadin, School of Humanities, Lisa Maria Asahari, Center of Islamic Development Management Study. This report is related to sustainability and SDG. As you know that sustainability has three pillars: people, profit, and planet. We focus on the poverty, which falls under the people pillar of sustainability. The aim of this pillar is to balance between individual and collective needs. Key point is workplace and family standard of living, education, social commitment, quality, opportunity. With the current situation, we focus on COVID-19 and its relevance to poverty, workplace initiative to assist employees during COVID-19, GDP growth, social initiative to combat COVID-19, equality, opportunity, and support towards vaccination, mobility, and quarantine. This study provides information how COVID-19 affects poverty in 5 countries, which are Nigeria, China, Thailand, Jordan, and Brunei.
COVID-19 has impacted heavily on Nigeria's SDGs attainment. This is so especially when one looks at the pre-pandemic levels and the economic indicators therein. The economy is commodity-based, which simply means that 80% of our foreign exchange comes from oil. In addition, there is heavy reliance on import for food and consumables. So at the onset of COVID-19, we have seen how a slump in oil price from $60 to an average of $15 to $27 led to a slump in GDP growth rate with minus 6.1%. This made Nigeria enter another recession. We have seen 7 million more people fall below the poverty line. And also, we've seen inflation rate peak at 12% to reach a maximum height of 18%. So this shows how COVID-19 has impacted the SDGs. For Goal 1, we have seen 7 million Nigerians added to the poverty pool due to weak aggregate demand, unemployment, and layoffs across public and private sector. For ending hunger, we've seen reduced earning due to commodity items lead to food price inflation. For Goal 3, good health and well-being, we've seen additional stress on an already weakened healthcare system, which has limited access to healthcare. Some of the response to mitigate COVID-19 effect are provided below.
Here is the overall index of China's SDP for 2020. The first quarter of 2020 is the most severe period for epidemic prevention in China, and its impact on poverty is mainly reflected in the following aspects. First, due to avoid personnel contact, which made some enterprises unable to carry out normal operation, especially the income of low-side operators and employees generally reduced. Second, most migrant workers could not return to work, while most of them have a single income source, which directly increases the life pressure of these workers. Third, in the western regions, the export of labor force has been impeded, and the sales of agriculture products have suffered market weakness, adding obstacles to poverty alleviation. The biggest challenge for the global economy is to achieve sustainable growth. During the COVID-19 outbreak, China has introduced a number of measures to stimulate economic growth, promote employment, and ensure social equity, which not only guarantee the rights of low-income people, but also led to a full recovery of economic development.
This is the SDG ranking from Thailand, with a global rank of 41 out of 193. Thailand has successfully reduced poverty over the past 3 decades, from over 65% in 1988 to under 10% in 2019. In 2020, there are 4.3 million poverty people in Thailand, and expect 1.5 million more in 2021. The pandemic has heavily disrupted the country's economy in so many aspects, like tourism, economy, and unemployment. GDP of Thailand decreased from 2.4 in 2019 to minus 6.5 in 2020 and expect to reach 2.8 by the end of 2021. Tourism is the main sector of Thai gross domestic product. Tourism income decreased 15%. Lockdown measures were implemented in varying degrees throughout the country. Revenue has decreased $742 million. Pandemic's impact on Thai's labor market. There are large increase in unemployment among young people, and more than 6 million people lost their jobs due to private sector lay off their staffs. To solving the poverty during COVID-19, financial support from government. The government released campaigns for Thai people, for example, giving money for individuals and liquidity boosting for entrepreneurs. Supportive from government and private sector in healthcare system, like establish quarantine center and provide vaccine to people up to 60% of population before the end of 2021. Reopening country to overseas tourists who have been vaccinated against COVID-19. The government is supporting work from home scheme where possible and support the unemployment by provide positions and release campaign for people who lost their jobs.
Jordan was affected like other countries in the world with coronavirus, and the World Bank expected an increase in the number of people living in Jordan to less than 1.3 dinars per day by 27% during the current year compared to the previous year. The bank also expected that the number of people who live on less than 2.25 dinars per day in Jordan will increase by 90%, while the number of people who live on less than 3.9 dinars per day will increase by 30.2%. And Jordan's ranking on the indicators of the Sustainable Development Goals for the year 2020 decreased by 8 points compared to 2019. Jordan ranked 89th out of 193 countries. The unemployment rate for the year 2020 increased to 24.7% compared to 19.1% for the year 2019. The highest unemployment rate was recorded in the two age groups 15 to 19 years and 20 to 24 years. Jordan is considered one of the resource-scarce countries, so Jordan was affected by the arrival of refugees before the pandemic. Unpopular level in Jordan in light of the COVID-19 crisis increased by 38% among the Jordanian population and 18% among Syrian refugees. The Jordanian economy is expected to grow by 1.8% compared to a contraction of 3.5% in 2020. Economists believe that the expected growth in Jordan does not mean that the economy has emerged from a state of recession, but that it does mean an improvement, even if slightly, in the economy. The Jordanian government sent aid to the poor, such as food baskets, blankets, labor support, and deferred loans, etc., but it was not a visible and sufficient solution. Finally, perhaps we can suggest some solution to reduce poverty, such as supporting daily workers and sectors, and encouraging work on the Internet. Government should provide great support to the affected individuals and companies.
Brunei Darussalam. Brunei Darussalam ranks 88 out of 166 countries in the overall SDG Performance Index. The overall economic outlook of Brunei Darussalam showed an overall increase in budget deficit. The country experienced issues such as food security. The nation is heavily reliant on importing products from overseas, such as rice from Thailand, meat and poultry from Australia, etc. As a result of the pandemic, food shortages occurred, which lead to a price hike in the market for these products. Deficit. Both public and private sectors suffer financial problems, particularly the tourism and airline industry. Unemployment also increased due to marginal redundancy occurring in these sectors. Our responses. The issue of food security was addressed with more effort on local agricultural development, such as Baras Leila and hydroponics. The government also established a new quarantine center that can cater for the population of less than 500,000. The government continues to provide a supportive and inclusive healthcare system with subsidized quarantine and vaccinations. To address unemployment, more freelance jobs and work-from-home jobs were created for the unemployed. The government is also promoting digitalization by providing cheaper and inclusive internet accessibility, especially for low-income groups, students, and the unemployed. The main conclusion of this study is the decline in economic activity due to the epidemic, which has threatened the livelihoods of families around the world. In many countries, the loss of income has led to a decline in healthcare and a sharp rise in food insecurity. In exclusive statements to Al-Ala, Musanik believes that rich countries should pay attention to these global effects, as the epidemic has clearly shown how the economy is intertwined with public health globally. And with the introduction of vaccines, there is still concern that the new mutations and variables that, if a virus develops, it can hamper recovery. So Musanik advises that families in poor countries where vaccination is likely to be slower get enough financial support so that they can follow public health guidelines without jeopardizing their basic lives. Thus, we see the need to provide economic assistance from rich countries to poor countries in order to maintain basic requirements during the current global economic downturn. Ultimately, we hope that next year will be much better than what we expect at the beginning of this year. Thank you for listening to our presentation.